The next episode of the Basic Toolbox series presented by the Writer's Launchpad. I'm Betty Withrow. I'm an author, blogger, workshop leader, and a speaker. During this time, I'm conducting my workshops virtually to get people acquainted with how I work and the way that the discussions run when I am able to resume my live workshops. Meanwhile, we've been having lively discussions about how to make your writing become more of what you want it to be more easily and more effectively. Today's session is about goals. What goals are, how to set them, how to motivate yourself and create the tools that will actualize your goals rather than having them be ideas that are floating around in your head. You will discover how you can create goals that specifically address the objectives that you identify. Take action on them and get the results that you want. Now I'm going to refer to some worksheets that I have. Rather than making notes on index cards like I did for some of the other sessions, I thought, well, let's try a different way and use the Word document that's the original. So hang on a second while I pull that up. And this template for goal setting can apply to anything, but in particular, since we're discussing writing, I've narrowed it down to exactly what your writing is about, what you want it to accomplish, who do you want to reach, and what effect do you want to have. When you begin with the end in mind, you have the course outlined, and all you need to do is to construct a method to get there. Actually, figuring out exactly what you want to do, what goal you want to accomplish, can be the most daunting part of the entire project. A lot of times people think that they want to create a piece of writing that will serve everyone because they have very high ideals, they want to serve the world, they want to make a difference, and we all do. We all want to make a difference. Everybody who's on this session wants to make a difference. However, we need to make one difference at a time in order to be effective. If we try to make the whole difference at once, we fall flat because of the vastness of the scope of creating change in this complicated system of events that we refer to as our world. So narrowing it down still further, I'm going to get into what are your goals in writing your project. First of all, let's look at what is the effect you want to create in the world. That's the biggest one. That's your top objective. That's the thing that is actually motivating you the most, we hope, as an author to create lasting and meaningful discussion that will activate people and motivate them to create change within the world. So what is, in your mind, the most important result that you want your writing to create for the world? Do you want to have your reader take a specific action? If so, what is that action? What exactly do you want your reader to do? When they read what you have written, how do you want them to react? To close the document or the book and say, well, that was interesting, that was a good read. Or do you want them to say, wow, I mean, that was totally it. I mean, she nailed it. And I realize now that I need to go do something. And not only that, but I realize what it is. And I'm going to go ahead and take action on it. I'm committed to doing it because they were so inspired by the words that you wrote, the messaging that you created. And how did that happen? It happened because you became incredibly clear about what you wanted and how you were going to construct it, and wordsmithing back directly from the point of your writing. Well, in rocket science, which, I use the metaphor of rockets a lot in my work. In rocket science, we refer to that as being the payload. What's your payload going up there for? I mean, why are all these people tinkering around with rockets and creating fuel and building gantries that will fall away? I mean, what are all these temporary structures about when the thing is just going to fly up and nobody's going to see it anymore? Like, how does that work? Okay, it's because the payload has value that everyone can recognize, and they're ready to do what it takes to get the payload to where it needs to go so that the mission can be accomplished. The robot pops out and takes the measurements. Maybe the person pops out and joins the space station. In the earlier moments of aerospace, we had people who actually landed on the moon. I mean, you know, these are impressive results. They take the commitment to understanding what the mission is and being ready to do the engineering that it takes to pull that off. So I want you to think very carefully about what it is that you want your writing to accomplish. Do you want your reader to take an action? Do you want them to experience a certain kind of feeling? Do you want them to feel that they can do it? If you're doing motivational writing, do you want to, you know, be inspiring enough that somebody says, whoa, I mean, like, I get it. Now I realize that I can do this. Is it technical writing? If it's technical writing where you're simply passing information along to your reader and your author presence is less, you have a different type of objective in mind where you're simply delivering information. So each one of these styles of writing has a different set of objectives. Identify which one of these you're doing. Understand exactly who you want your writing to reach and what kind of action you want them to take. Who will be served by the result that you want to achieve? I mean, you have an objective. Who is this objective going to benefit when it's accomplished? Is it a portion of society? Is it an individual? Is it an organization of some kind? And why is what you have to say in this presentation important to achieve this result? Where's the value of your positioning within the discussion so that you understand how you can make your words have the most impact during the time that you have to present to your audience, either in words or in person? How will you present the situation? And what is it that you want to change about it? Now, if you're doing transformational work or even political writing of some sort, you may find that you're presented with a very emotionally charged situation that brings up a lot of difficult emotions for people. And as an author, it's your responsibility, if you're going to put your audience into a place of discomfort, to at least present one place that they can take action to do something about it. Therefore, you're not leaving the reader with the burden of the overall circumstance, but you're empowering them to feel that, okay, now I understand where we are, and from this reading, I'm able to understand a little bit more of what it is that we need to do. So that brings us to, who is your reader? Who do you want to reach with this piece of writing? Who's your audience? Are you speaking with someone who's like you? Are you speaking with someone who is not like you? Are you speaking to a group of people who have different characteristics? Each one of these kinds of writing has a different answer to those questions. What will your reader experience as a result of reading your book? This goes back to what I just said about leaving your reader in a place where they feel not helpless, not a sense of despair, if you're talking about difficult subjects. Instead, that you have presented them with a possibility, an actionable idea that they can either accept or reject, but at least you haven't left them needing to figure out what they're supposed to do. You're presenting an idea that they can add to. What action do you want, wait, who do you want to reach with this piece of writing? Hi, Joseph. Do you want, who do you want to reach? What do you want them to do? Those are the two golden questions of the moment. Then from there,
the Women's Network group She's a writing coach.
Hi. Greetings, Joseph. Can you hear me?
Hi, I can.
Oh, good.
Sorry,
Great.
I didn't realize I was not muted. Hopefully, I didn't interrupt.
Oh, that's fine. I'm glad you're here. Welcome. No one else had arrived yet, so I just dove into the material reading from my Word document. And I'll send you the recording so you haven't missed any of the presentation. But you being here means that you can interact with some of these questions, which makes it more interesting.
All right, good. Well,
Yeah.
thank you. Yeah, I'm on the road, as you can see, but
Uh-huh.
I don't want to miss out. So
Right. Okay. Are you comfortable talking? You obviously are not driving, so that's what I'm.
yeah, I'm not driving. I'm in a drive-in with my father-in-law, and we're going back to. We're down on Laval Road near Bakersfield, or the Grapevine.
Okay.
Southern California and Central Valley meetup.
Uh-huh. Good. So you're having in-person meetups down there?
It's just family. We're my mother-in-law had some tomato starts, and we're gonna try to get those going in the garden, and
Yeah.
also getting a batch of cookies, homemade.
Oh, good.
So we're buying a little lunch, and yeah, it's nice to get out and make a little trek.
Yeah, I know. Every time that you leave the house at this point, it just feels so special, and you know, the hang on a second, my iPad is driving me nuts. But yeah, it feels really good to get out and move around and do things.
Yeah, things we used to take for granted.
Excellent. Yes, exactly. There's no possibility of taking things for granted anymore. That's one of the things, you know.
Right.
Yeah. So, yeah, I'm going to continue talking on my topic here, unless you have something else you want to add.
No, I'm listening. I'll stop sharing.
Video. No, it's fine. Sharing is caring. I mean, this is what, as I said earlier in my meeting here, this is what I'm doing instead of having live in-person retreats, because this is what's available. So it's the same things I would be presenting at that time. And so I just got into the topic of, for your reader, who do you want to reach with your piece of writing? Before that, well, I'll just recap for a quick second here, okay? Your goals in writing this project is the topic. And then, so for the world, what is the most important result that you want your writing to create in the world? And then, and I got into a little bit more detail about how when you're starting with the end in mind, realizing what that objective is the key piece to being able to create effective messaging. And I use the payload metaphor because I have a family aerospace background, and I use that metaphor all the time in my marketing and messaging. And that's kind of how I think, you know. So, so when you have your payload defined and what it is that you want your payload to do, then from there you can engineer how to actually create that result. Which is the next question, is who will be served by the result that you want to achieve? And why is what you have to say important in order to achieve this result? Like, what's your point of leverage in the discussion that will move the discussion forward in a way that will promote your eventually achieving the goals that you have, or the objective that you've outlined? I haven't really gotten into how to create the goals yet. So, and how will you present the situation, and what do you want to change about it? I believe, and I was taught this very fiercely by my rhetoric teacher, that you have a responsibility as an author that if you're going to create a difficult situation in any kind of writing, but particularly in public discourse, that you have an obligation to at least make, if you're talking about hard stuff, which that's what we're talking about right now lately, you need to at least give the reader some piece of information that is actionable and present or propose some sort of a solution to at least one aspect of what you're discussing, so that they're not leaving them with the emotional burden of the difficulty that you've just finished outlining. And since there's all different kinds of writing, not everybody's going to be tasked with that level of responsibility. Like if you're doing technical writing, that doesn't apply. But if you're doing other types of writing, it does.
One's tilting.
So, continuing, for your reader, who do you want to reach with this piece of writing? Who's the person or the pool of people, who's the audience that is going to be able to take action on your writing or feel what it is that you want to feel? If you're doing fiction, how will you, who is it that you want to motivate if you're doing motivational discussions? Who is that one reader that is your ideal reader that you construct in your mind, and then you write to that person alone in the singular? When you do that, you have that one ideal reader who's like, okay, this is the person that if they get this and they can do something on
Yeah.
this. Okay, who's that person?
With
Your mom. Oh, thank you.
yeah,
Is
what
this
will they
one yours?
experience?
Which one's yours? Was yours with everything, Joe?
As a result of reading your book.
That looks like it.
I'm gonna go on mute for a second because we got
Sure.
a lunch going on, but I'm listening.
Yeah,
I'm on
that's fine.
headphones.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So what do you want your reader to experience as a result of reading your book? Do you want them to take action? Do you want them to have an emotion? Do you want them to become motivated? Do you want them to become competent in the technical expertise that you're presenting? Each one of those has a different mechanism to create rapport between you and the reader, and a different level of understanding for you to generate as you begin to construct an author-reader connection. What action do you want your reader to take? How will what you write motivate the reader to take this action? And that brings us to, who will you be for the reader? How are you presenting yourself as the author? Are you an authority figure? Are you a peer? Are you presenting entertainment? Are you relatively, or is your identity not particularly significant because you're doing business writing? That's technical. But if it's motivational, then you need to have some sort of an identity so that you can get your reader to desire to have rapport with you and be able to reach them mentally and emotionally. How will you connect with your reader? When you really get down to who is your reader and who are you going to be for your reader, then that comes down to, how are you going to connect with your reader? It's like building a bridge. You know what's on one side, you know what's on the other side. How are you going to put that bridge together in such a way that it's sturdy, it's trustworthy, the reader is ready to believe in what you're saying, acknowledge you in the role that you've created within the reader-author continuum, and hopefully attain the result that you wanted to have. To have the thought that was in your mind appear effectively in the mind of the reader. That's the object of the game. That's what I meant by payload. When your thought appears in your reader's mind and they say, oh, yeah, I do actually need to do that. Or, whoa, I really, I'm ready to be with that idea. Then you have accomplished your first task as a writer. Your ultimate goal is to get them to take action on your piece of persuasive writing, if you're doing persuasive writing. And, as I said, you have a responsibility, if you're doing persuasive writing, to create value within the world. We have enough people who are just spouting off when they don't really have value to add to anyone else's life. So, and I feel confident that no one who's involved in my community fits into that category. and I'm grateful for that. And so in what way will you know when you have achieved your goal? How, when you have a goal, I was actually just on a workshop where she said that if you don't have a goal, everything just explodes. It's true. When you have a goal, then you have something to go for, rather than a bunch of feelings all kind of going, wow, I really want to do this, but I don't know where to begin. No, this is what this is about. We're narrowing it down to a scientific process. So how will you know when your goal is complete? In order to have effective goals, you need certain things. You need timelines. First you need an objective. You need to understand exactly what you're going to do, which is what I just outlined. And then from there, you need to have measurable increments, benchmarks that you can refer to. You need timelines. And depending on how complicated what it is that you're creating, you can create various structures that will support you in keeping yourself on track, increasing your word count, and so on. Each one of those has a whole different process. And depending on what you're writing, again, they each feed into the system that creates streamlined, actionable goals that can be broken down into small steps and are achievable, and yet are also challenging. Because if it's not challenging, you're not going to do it. And if it's too challenging, you're also not going to do it. Without pressure, nothing happens. And with too much pressure, nothing happens. So it's all about regulating your drives and learning to understand how you relate with your material so that you're interacting with your process, not burning out, but keeping your momentum. When you build your momentum and you have a clear structure for your goals, you're going to do it. You're going to be excited because you met your goals. Along with this, your goals involve three things, the three basics of writing, back to the basics. Learning to understand exactly what your objective is gives you the big goal. Learning to understand who is the person who is going to be receptive to your message and able to act on your message is the second goal. The third goal is constructing an identity that's effective in moving your message from point A to point B. I have a goals worksheet here, and I'm going to read out the points that are on the sheet so that if you are so inclined, you can listen to the replay if you're not here, or take notes, or take notes. Okay, and now you have an idea, you have a goal. I like to do a goal setting. I have several different goal setting systems that I use, and the simpler, the better. I do a 2 big goals a day one. Once I've done those 2 big ones, then everything else just kind of falls into place and becomes much easier to happen. I also put my goals into a notebook that has, like, say, between 12 and 20 things that I promise myself I'm going to do within the next 2 weeks, or know the reason why, or know the reason how that didn't happen. Forget why. Why doesn't work. And I also set daily goals. I said the big 2 and other ones that proceed from that, and so on. So with your big goal, out of the 12 to 20, what's the biggest one? What's the one that you say, hey, I did that, I knocked it out of the park, everything else is gravy? My big goal, and how I will reach it for the next 2 weeks ending, put an end date, is a few words, no more than 10 words. My big goal for this 2-week period is blank. This is important to me because blank. Okay, fill that in. What makes it important to you? What are the big things? And if the shorter you make these things in your mind and in your notes, the easier it's going to be for you to grasp them and say, that's not so hard. That's actually pretty simple. I think I'll just do it, instead of figuring out reasons why it's hard. I will know that I've achieved it when, and that's your benchmark. When I have achieved it, I will feel this. You promise yourself, I will feel, after I've achieved this goal, I will feel like a winner because I made a promise to myself and I kept it. And furthermore, it takes me one step further down the road that I've visualized. And as I'm building the road right in front of myself, I'm ready to take the next step. Because that's what it's like in creative activity. You build the road and you step onto it. The things that might stop me are these. Okay, be honest with yourself. What are the things that hang you up? Where are the places where you short circuit yourself? And what are the excuses that you tend to use most often? Because everybody's got little excuses that they lean on. And every time you bust yourself out on an excuse, you become less likely to tolerate it the next time it shows up for you. Because that's what they do. They come in from outside and say, oh, no, you don't need to do that. I'll just take over. Don't let them do it. I will take action on things that might stop me by how are you going to deal with that when they show up? What are you going to say? I know somebody who likes to delegate tasks for her excuses or her naysayers, her inner talk, for the perfectionist. I want you to count, categorize, and sort all of the rocks on this beach over here. And, then they have a job and they go away because they're busy doing what you told them to do instead of what they told you to do. So the ways I will support myself to reach this goal are these. What are you going to do? What specific ways will you support your creativity? This can mean self-care. This can mean self-discipline. It can mean turning off your phone and telling people they need to text you instead of calling during certain hours because you're committed to making this goal happen. And my reward for reaching this goal is this. Okay, outline a reward, go ahead and reach that goal, promise yourself the reward, and then make a written promise that says, I promise to do my best to reach this goal. Don't say you're going to try, say you're going to do your best, because with commitment plus action, you get results. Without those two components, you will not reach the third. When you follow the commitment to your goals and you take action on them, you will achieve your results. So that concludes the basics of this presentation. I love goals, even though sometimes I get really annoyed by my goals because I'm like, why did I say I was going to do that? And then, I step into some old pattern that says, this is stupid. This is never going to work. Why did I think this was a good idea? All those things. But there it is in black and white. When I was thinking clearly, I realized that this was something I needed to do. And I wrote it down and said I was going to do it. So because I have made that promise to myself, I keep that promise. Otherwise, I end up feeling very unhappy because I hate it when people break promises, and breaking promises to myself is worse than having someone else break one. I mean, I'm pretty committed to making sure that if I say I was going to do it, that's what I did. So I hope this has been a good outline of how the goal setting process works. It's one of the things that I do as a writing coach, is to work with the clients to understand exactly what it is that they want to do and to flesh out those goals and leave other goals behind. For example, at the beginning, I was talking about how people think they want to write for everyone, but not everyone is ready to hear what you have to say. You need to write to the people who are ready to hear what you have to say and say it for them. Because the real goal in all art and communication is when it lands in someone else's life and they say, that's exactly what I was trying to say and I didn't know how to say it. And then they feel and they know that they know you. And when they know you, they're ready to be with you. And you may or may not ever know them personally, but knowing that you made a difference in somebody else's process in their life or in the world is more valuable than I could possibly describe. When I've had people come back to me after having read something that I wrote and said, that nailed it for me. That not only made my day, it made my week. So I hope and trust that you will want to be making that kind of a difference in the world. I only have intelligent people in my world. And so if you're watching this, you're one of them, and I thank you for being here. So at this point, I'm going to turn off the recording. I can figure out how to do it, because Zoom has changed everything once again. Oh, there it is. And I'll be open for a private conversation. Thanks for being here. Betty Withrow, thewriterslaunchpad.com. If you go and visit my website, you'll find lots of tools, interesting links to other tools, and places where you can find out more about what I do, how I do it, and what my idea is of what's possible to achieve in the world. So thanks for being here. I'll end this now.